And ultimately, the state of current immigration leads to an ever-increasing role for government bureaucrats and power and manipulation. And all of this leads to the craziness of what happens on our southern border, which is, freaking people out, but is really crazy. Thousands of people leave their homes all over the world, hundreds of thousands all over the world, from China to Pakistan to Arabia to all over South America. They leave their home, they trek for thousands of miles, much of it by foot, through jungles and deserts to reach a border. They have no idea what's going to happen. And then they cross that border and create mayhem, and then the government subsidizes their housing and their food. And it's just one big, massive disaster that makes no sense. And indeed, within this mayhem, there's the issues of security and criminality. People legitimately lose track of those because they're not tracking who's coming in and who's coming out. There's no objective standard, who to let in, who not to let in. And it's just one big shit show. All right, so what do we do about this? What do we do about this? What do we do about this within the context of the current political system? Within the context of America as it is today? This is not my ultimate solution for, a laissez-faire heaven one day. Also, I would add to whatever we do here, directly in immigration, which I'll talk about, there also has to be auxiliary things, or can be auxiliary things that we do. We'll talk about those as well in both immigration and the economy more broadly. So what do we do? What's the solution? Well, you have to start by scrapping the entire immigration system today. And I would include here doing away with the 1924, 1990, 1980, whatever, 64, 1980s, all of the laws. Creation of H-1Bs. H-1Bs should be gone. They were a travesty. People argue about H-1Bs, but one of the great distortions, H-1B creates a great distortion, and that is people are stuck in these jobs. They can't change employers. Just scrap the whole thing. Everything needs to go. You need to start completely fresh, completely with nothing of this legacy disaster, this legacy that has been created by basically pressure group politics. And I include here, America needs to leave whatever treaties it has regarding asylum. Asylum is not a standard by which somebody should enter the country. It shouldn't be a standard. The standard should be, whatever the standard is, it should be America's interest, not the suffering of somebody. The suffering of somebody should not be the qualification. Suffering politically versus suffering economically is treated differently. Why? Why is that suffering is more important than that suffering? None of that is important. None of that should be accepted. So we should exit every treaty that requires us to accept people based on asylum. We should scrap the entire immigration system and start over. And basically have three categories for visas. The dominant category, which is a work visa, a tourist visa, which would be very limited. I'll talk about when it should be applied. Most countries, even today, their citizens enter the United States without a visa, right? If they're visiting, and that would stay. And then, student visa, a student visa. So let's think about how you would do this. Three types of visa. Basically, I would say that anyone who can show that they can take care of themselves financially through employment or through the wealth that they have, and who does not pose an identifiable criminal or national security threat should be welcome as an immigrant on, let's say, a 5-year visa, renewable as long as they maintain the status, that is, of income or wealth. So I'll say this again. Anyone This is the principle. This is the solution. Anyone who can show that they can take care of self through employment or wealth and who does not pose an identifiable criminal or national security threat should be welcome as an immigrant on a 5-year visa, renewable, as long as they maintain that status of income or wealth. So first, that takes away the whole issue of welfare. They're making money, or they have money. And by the way, just to make sure of this, we can attach to this bill a provision that says these people are not eligible for any form of welfare until they become citizens, which is kind of weird and bizarre. Like, one of the privileges of citizenship is you get to go on the state. But okay, you know, I'd like to get rid of the welfare state first, but we got a welfare state. Let's just, this is within the context of it. So they can have a 5-year visa, renewable as long as they maintain status. And this means that anybody who has a certain level of wealth, and we can decide what that level of wealth is, I don't know, figure it out, or who has a job offer, a legit job offer from a United States company that at a minimum is for a, call it a living wage, whatever the hell that is. Some minimum amount, doesn't have to be a lot, but one that would prevent them from allow them to live reasonably well, who passes a criminal and national security screen, gets the visa. You could imagine employment agencies setting up shop all over the world, connecting American businesses with potential employees, getting them job offers, having a terminal that connects them to FBI, helping run the national security and criminal screen, and basically having the authority then either to issue a visa or to issue a paperwork that allows the person to get a visa and come into the United States. Right? So that is step one. Now, these visas would give a person a right to work, the ability to work. They would not be eligible for citizenship for at least 20 to 25 years. So you don't have to worry about this flood of immigrants coming in tomorrow, and before they have a time to assimilate or any opportunity to assimilate, they're already voting. So no eligibility for citizenship for at least 20, 25 years. And if you're really worried about this, if you're really concerned about citizenship, then I have no real problem with saying they never become citizens. Their kids are citizens. The kids can become citizens, but they never become citizens. If you make it 20, 25 years, you know, they've spent a significant portion of their life in America. If our culture is strong, if we know what we're about, then they will have assimilated by then. And remember, they have to work. Their visa will not be renewed unless they're working, unless they're producing income, or they've accumulated enough wealth. In either case, they become productive members within American society. What better way to assimilate into America than to work in America, than to be part of an economic enterprise in America? I would also have a meaningful citizenship test. The citizenship test today is stupid. It basically asks a series of multiple choice questions, all from a very delimited number of questions. You just have to pick up a little book, memorize the content of the book, and you're in. It needs to be a meaningful citizenship test and not an ideological test. We'll get to ideology in a minute. Not an ideological test, but a test that basically figures out whether you understand the American system of government. You understand the principles on which America is based. Maybe Americans should take this citizenship test as well before they are allowed to vote. We'll leave that for another show. But they have to be able to articulate, say something about the founding of America, something about the separation of powers and the checks and balances, something about individual rights and the meaning of the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, something about these things. So a meaningful citizenship test. And then, as we said, no eligibility for any form of welfare. You know, at the federal level, at least. I don't know if you can constitutionally ban states from providing welfare to them. But again, they would be required to have a real job. Or, by the way, you know, income could be, when they renew the visa, could be from their own venture, from an entrepreneurial venture. That is, this visa would not restrict them from staying with the particular employer. You don't care who the employer is. You don't care what the source of income is. That is, if they started their own business and now getting income, that's fine. If they've started a YouTube channel and they're getting income, that's fine. As long as they are producing income, that they are living off of that income, that are not living off of the state in any way, their visa should be renewed. So, for example, a standard could be, if you're getting welfare from the state, from local or state government, your visa will not be renewed. So while state and local government might be allowed to give them welfare, because the federal government can't control that, that would be a black mark on the renewability of their visa. Now, let's talk about the screening. So there'll be a number of criteria for screening. One is criminality. Based on U.S. law, have you participated in a crime? For example, gang membership. You know, it's true that you might have been prosecuted of a crime and been in jail in another country. So in that sense, you've already, served your time, if you will. It doesn't matter. For the purposes of this, in order to, again, be very clear, you would exclude people with criminal backgrounds. You would exclude gang membership. I mean, there'd be some gray areas where, particularly in oppressive regimes, where it's not clear if somebody, what the reason he was prosecuted for, what. But that's what a screening is for. You would screen for all these things. And in some cases, great cases, you would have to dig a little deeper, right? Terrorism. Are you a member of a terrorist organization? Have you ever been a member of a terrorist organization? If you're no longer a member of a terrorist organization, how can you prove that you have now repudiated that organization? Right? So, are you a physical threat? And the United States has pretty good databases. Are your friends terrorists? Are your neighbors terrorists? Are your, not neighbors maybe, are your family members terrorists? And really dig. Particularly if you're coming, let's say, from a Muslim country. Is there a real risk that you're a spy? And again, I don't know what the criteria would be here exactly, but are you a national security threat? Have you been affiliated in one way or another with the Chinese Communist Party or with Chinese securities? Have you been a member of a hacking group that's hacked American computers? I mean, all of those kind of things. And then I would add to that, do you advocate for, have you advocated for an ideology that has been identified as an explicit enemy of the United States? That is, you can think of during World War II, have you advocated for Nazism or Japanese imperialism? And today, are you an Islamist? Are you affiliated in any way with Islamism? Do you, express outwardly the manifestations of Islamism? For example, do you require your wife to go completely covered? Given Islamism is the ideology of our enemy today, that would disqualify you from entering the United States. Now, we'd have to define it as the enemy. That would require certain foreign policy changes. But not a ban on Islam, But a ban on Islamism, absolutely. And, you know, you would have to accept you know, as part of your, certainly as a citizen, but even as an immigrant, you would have to accept the rule of law in America, the Constitution and the rule of law of America. And you have to swear to that, do some kind of legal statement that you accept that, with everything that that implies. And if that means 10 million people come in, 1 million, 5 million, 300,000, I don't know what the right number is. There's no right number. Whatever the number is, it is. And it's based on the fact that they have a job offer. They have a job waiting for them. And then beyond that, I'd say only direct family, spouse, non-adult children are automatically approved for a visa. Now, once you become a citizen, it's possible that, you know, you allow citizenship to your children, and maybe there's a path for the children, the non-adult children, to become citizens independent of the parents. If they get a job, they now get their own visas. In a sense, they start the 20, 25-year clock. You have to work out all the details in terms of family, but family reunification, bringing your relatives from all over the world here, particularly your elderly parents or whatever, cannot be a priority and should not be a priority for a system like this. Now, notice, okay, so that's the bulk of it. That's most of the visas that are relevant for immigrants, right? Citizenship is something that's pushed into the future. It's something that's a little harder to get. It's something that you have to achieve. Now, what about tourists? Well, I would require only for citizens, require a tourist visa only from citizens of countries where there might be a national security threat, so that you can screen them. By the way, I didn't mention health checks. Yeah, I mean, with the criminal and terrorist stuff, you can also do a health check, make sure they don't have tuberculosis, other kinds of infectious diseases. I think the United States today has a list of all the infectious diseases you cannot enter the United States with, Ebola, I don't know, whatever. So real infectious diseases that are deadly or that are easily transmittable and hard to cure should be excluded, right? You should be able to exclude people from that, and if they have that, just like they did in Ellis Island. Tourists should be allowed in, again, unless there's some risk, either because there's a epidemic in their country, a pandemic overseas, and then you want to screen them for health issues, or they come from a country that might pose a potential national security risk, and then you want to be able to do a criminal or a national security screen on them. But other than that, tourists should be allowed in pretty freely. And then finally, student visas. I mean, one of the great crimes in student visas today is that we give out student visas and then we don't allow them to work while they're students. And we don't allow the spouses to work. This is my case. When I came here on an F1 visa, my wife had an F2 visa. She was not allowed to work. So we both had to survive somehow. I wasn't allowed to work. I had to work on campus. So I worked on campus and I worked illegally, right? And, you know, that's how you get along. Consulting job here, consulting job there, you do what you can, right? So student visas should require screening, the same as work visas. There should be an adjusted for income and wealth, so that the student can support themselves while studying. And there should be zero restrictions on work of students or spouses in the United States, while in the United States. And once a student finishes his study, he should be able to apply for a work visa, and so on. Now, what does that mean for our border, particularly our southern border, where we have all these problems? Well, there would be a few transit points where people can come in with their visas that they've received from the employment agency or from whatever mechanism we create to facilitate these visas. and where they're checked and allowed in. Now, anyone who tries to enter in a different location can be therefore rationally assumed to be a criminal or terrorist, because otherwise, why would you do it? Or somebody who wants to come in to benefit from welfare, though not clear how they would ever get it. And I think in those cases, it would be legitimate to have instant deportation and exclusion from ever immigrating legally. So you can never come here again. And for repeat offenders, jail time. I mean, this would basically end the massive flow of illegal immigration over the southern border. People would just come here legally. But it would be large numbers. Now, I just want to say a few words about some other things that I think need to be done in association with this. We need to generally, pretty much for everything, liberate our economy as much as we can. We need to get rid of things like minimum wages and required benefits and make it easy to employ people and make it easy to fire people and hire people, whether local Americans or foreigners. We need to make employment legal, hiring and firing easy. We need to make starting a business easy, super easy. So we need to make America's economy freer. And ultimately, over time, it would be great if we started reducing and actually eliminating the welfare state. Certainly at the federal level. Ultimately, I'd love to see it at the state level as well. But at the federal level, eliminating the welfare state. And then in addition to this, we have to solve the problem of education. And here I wanted one aspect of education that affects both primary, high school and college education. And also, generally, the public debate, intellectual public debate. We need to stop endorsing multiculturalism. We need to reject the idea that all cultures are equal. We need to be very clear with people coming to America that they are coming here with expectation that they will adopt our culture, that our culture is better than theirs, that our culture, the reason they want to come here is because it's good. The reason they left theirs is because it's not good. We need to be very explicit about this. We cannot teach our children at whatever age they are that we are colonizers and we are evil and we are bad and we are horrible and we have an awful culture and the cultures of all these other countries are just the same as ours and just as good as ours. That's just not true. And we need to understand why that is, individual rights, and promote it. And through doing that, by emphasizing our strengths, by emphasizing our virtues, the value that America represents, we will accelerate assimilation. We will say to the immigrants, you've come here. We expect you to follow American law. We expect you to integrate into our culture. We expect you, I think the whole idea of, letting immigrants use their native language is absurd. We need to integrate them linguistically. There needs to be one official language in the United States, that's English. A big part of assimilation is language, and that needs to be a demand, an expectation. And by the way, if they come here to work, they will have to speak English. Now, what would be the outcome of this new immigration policy? Well, first of all, we're talking about a lot of additional people coming into this country. A new wave of immigration. Immigration today is relatively high, but as a percentage of the existing population, still pretty low as compared to what it was in the late 19th century. And think about the late 19th century. What a dynamic, invigorating American culture that was. So the solution will revitalize America. It will express America's confidence in itself and in its values. And refocus our energy on individualism, on individual rights, on the right of individuals to pursue their happiness using their own mind in pursuit of their own values. Free from coercion, free from the pressure groups. It will clarify who is an American. Ultimately, America is an idea. And we expect these ideas to manifest in virtues, in the character of who Americans are. And Americans are born every day, all over the world. People with the kind of character, with the kind of virtues, with the kind of values that are cherished in America are born everywhere. And we should be inviting them to come here and re-energize and populate America. Fill her up. We've got lots of empty land. Our culture will be revitalized. Great artists and thinkers and producers and creators and chefs and dancers and all kinds of people will come here who will re-energize American culture. They won't come here to be funded by the state. They won't come here to get handouts. They won't come here because of their skin color or because they're persecuted or because they're poor and miserable. They'll come here because they want to make something of themselves. They'll come here because they want to live free and because they want to make a living. Think of all the enormous benefits we would get from having more people like that. There are millions, hundreds of millions probably in the world of the 8 billion people who qualify as spiritually American. And if they come here, America becomes a bigger, more vibrant, more dynamic, more exciting, more ambitious place. And that's exciting. I know for some people, this is what causes them fear. But if you yourself are American in the sense of ambitious, individualistic, a thinker, then you relish such a culture. We drain the brains of our enemies. We bring the most productive people in the world here. We make the rest of the world, from a perspective of military threat to the United States, irrelevant. We would be so far ahead of everybody else in terms of the geniuses here, in terms of innovation and technology and science, and in terms of our military, that nobody would come close. Nobody would ever threaten the United States under those circumstances. We'd be overwhelmingly the most powerful state in the world. And that's because, to a large extent, opening up immigration, increasing immigration, the way I've explained, would create a dynamic entrepreneurial economy. We'd see massive economic growth, huge amounts of innovation and productivity increases, a more refined and better division of labor, which would translate into massively higher standard of living. Trade, more trade, raise the standard of living. The more we trade, the more people we have to trade with, the more people we have who can produce. The richer we are. And we'd have a lot more geniuses. We'd indeed become the magnet of geniuses to come to this country from all over the world. What an exciting place to be. And, you know, the dull, stagnating parts of America would either shape up, would either become ambitious, become dynamic, or they die. But that's the way it should be. You get what you deserve. You get what you pay for. You get what you work for. We indeed have a smaller, less powerful, less intrusive government. I mean, just think about the size today of, the border security and ICE and all the different agencies responsible for immigration and reviewing and the bureaucrats, and all of that is gone. Much less rights being violated. Simple process. Everybody can understand it. Laws generally should be understandable. We would attract the best people in the world. No handouts, no giveaways. And we would take off the table the most contentious issue that we have today in our politics. Less polarization, less emotional craziness. I mean, the racists will still be racist, but they would be marginalized. And maybe some of them will change their minds once America becomes as dynamic as I know it will. And finally, we will have a quieter border. Almost no illegal immigrants. Just everything, the whole temperature of everything about immigration would come down. We get all the benefits of having all these amazing people come to this country. And there's only upside. I don't see any downsides to it. None. Zero. Nada. If you understand that economics is not a zero sum, it's additive. Every productive individual adds to my life, makes my life a smidgen better. Millions of productive individuals make my life a lot better. Billions make it even more better. Not only can I benefit from free trade with gazillions of people in all countries all over the world because of free trade, having them come here, not all of them, but many millions of them, is a huge benefit to me because trade with people from far away is more expensive. Some of those regimes over there are horrific and I don't want to support them. And people who come to America become more productive. Because of technology, because of capital, because of innovation. As soon as they cross the border, doing the same job they did in their own country, they are more productive in America than they were there. We're better organizations, better technology, better infrastructure, and more motivation. That's why they make more money here. So everybody becomes more productive, which makes me richer.